There was a bloodless coup today in Nigeria, which is Black Africa's biggest and richest nation and the world's 8th largest oil producer. The overthrow of strongman Major General Yakubu Gowon reportedly was engineered by the head of his personal bodyguards. Gowon received word of the coup while at a meeting of the Organization of African Unity in Uganda. He would say only, "There's nothing to worry about."
After the sudden overthrow of General Yakubu Gowon in 1975, the once celebrated Nigerian head of state found himself thrust into uncertainty and exile. From ruling one of Africa's most powerful nations to quietly rebuilding his life abroad, Gowon's story after power is one of resilience, reflection, and redemption. Hi guys, welcome to Afriverse's story. On today's episode, we look at what really happened after Gowon's downfall, his life in exile, the shocking revelations that followed, and the remarkable journey that brought him back into Nigeria's good graces. Do stay tuned and enjoy the ride. Why General Gowon lost grip in July 1975 was multifactorial. His pre-military background, personal character, military training and experience, the crisis circumstances under which power was placed in his hands, the dynamic evolving nature of Nigerian society and his armed forces over a period of unprecedented challenges, and his reaction to those changes and challenges were all important. In the final analysis, the late Professor Billy Dudley observed that, quote, Gowon could conceivably have ruled for much longer if he had had the continuous support of his own constituency, the armed forces, but the constituents over the years had become alienated from their representative. End of quote. On July 29, 1975, 9 years to the day a coup he did not plan brought him to power at Ikeja Barracks, elements within his constituency recalled him.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this is a statement by me on the situation in Nigeria. From all indication, a new government has been established in Nigeria. I wish to state that I, on my part, have also accepted the change and pledged my full loyalty to my nation, to my country, and the new government. Therefore, in the overall interest of the nation and our beloved country, I appeal to all concerned to cooperate fully with the new government and ensure the preservation of peace, unity, and the stability of our dear motherland.
Former secessionist leader Emeka Ojukwu was still in exile in Ivory Coast, reacted to the news of the coup against Gowon, according to Frederick Forsyth, with a smile. Nevertheless, General Gowon, far away in Kampala, had friends. Many offers of residence came to him in Kampala from various African countries. He notified the new regime in Lagos that he will leave Kampala for Lome in Togo. Since he was financially broke, tear-eyed members of the Nigerian delegation, along with staffers at the Nigerian High Commission in Kampala, donated £3,000 to enable him to begin a new life. He was flown to Lome via Garoua in Cameroon, aboard President Idi Amin's executive jet. Part of the flight passed through Nigerian airspace, and Gowon took the opportunity to transmit a radio message reaffirming loyalty and support for Brigadier Mohammed's new regime. Although offered permanent domicile in Togo, he chose to join his family in the United Kingdom. He received additional £10,000 donated from General Eyadema, the then head of state of Togo. Following a telephone call to Brigadier Mohammed, during which he made requests for elementary federal assistance, he left for London. When he got to London, he was offered official accommodation by the Nigerian government, which he, however, turned down for a variety of reasons. After some weeks at the Portman Hotel, he moved into the house of an old friend called Mr. Emmanuel Oti at 472 Finchley Road, London. The delay was to enable the house to be redecorated by Mr. and Mrs. Oti and Brigadier Sam Obemudia, who had been in the UK when the coup took place in Nigeria. Other friends came to the assistance of the family. It was not until September 1975, 2 months after, that he began to get his pension and gratuities as a retired 4-star general. In the 9 years he had been Nigeria's ruler, he had not built himself a single house, inside or outside the country, nor did he expropriate 1 kobo of the government's money. Unlike some of those who served under him, his total savings throughout his service years, as well as his years as Nigeria's leader, was 75,000, all of which was inside Nigeria. In time to come, this will stand as a stark contrast to the conduct of and personal fortunes of most of those who conspired to remove him from office or benefited from it. Once he settled with his family, the general, who was offered several master's degree programs, signed up for an undergraduate studies in political science at Warwick University. Newspapers in Nigeria later carried news items and photographs depicting the former Nigerian leader carrying trays in a student cafeteria in the UK. The Mohammed regime was embarrassed and therefore dispatched Brigadier Theophilus Danjuma, who took Kano-born Colonel Wali along, to ask Gowon adopt a supposedly more dignified stance. Gowon rejected the overture and reassured his embarrassed sympathizers that he was comfortable with his situation. Conceivably, nothing could be more embarrassing than to be overthrown while attending an OAU summit. He made friends among Nigerian students at Warwick. Meanwhile, his spouse, the former First Lady, Mrs. Victoria Gowon, who was a nurse, registered as a catering student at the University College in London. If you find this video worthwhile, please take us some time to smash a like and subscribe to the channel, as it goes a long way in supporting our efforts. Thank you. Now let's get back to the video. After a coup scare in December 1975, which was linked by unsubstantiated rumors to the Togolese government under Iyadema, General Gowon was later publicly linked by the surviving successor government under Lieutenant General Olusegun Obasanjo to the aborted coup bid of February 1976. Lieutenant Colonel Buka Sukadimka, an officer from the Angas ethnic group of Plateau State, announced the botched February coup bid. Tragically, General Mohammed was killed, along with Colonel Ibrahim Taiwo and a few others. His other colleagues, eager to avoid the notion that only northern officers could rule, elevated then Lieutenant General Obasanjo to the position of head of state and commander-in-chief. Then Lieutenant Colonel Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, who had been outside the country on official trip when the coup took place, was double promoted to the rank of brigadier and appointed to the position of Chief of Staff, Supreme Headquarters. The official explanation for this, echoed by regime figures in public interviews, was that the decision was made to placate the Muslim Far North, which allegedly viewed the coup attempt as an act of the Plateau Middle Belt vengeance. The officer who actually coordinated the military resistance to the coup attempt, then Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma, then Chief of Army Staff, remained as Chief of Army Staff. Indeed, it was Danjuma that nominated Yar'Adua for the position of Chief of Staff. Although they later fell out in what became a nasty feud, said to have been driven by Yar'Adua's desire to assert himself over senior officers and corner political appointments for his cronies. To be fair, it must be noted, however, that Yar'Adua's side of the story of his misunderstanding with Danjuma, Yisa Doko, and others was never really publicly articulated before he died. Anyway, Gowon vigorously denied the allegation of complicity. In an atmosphere of open press speculations, suspicion and outright condemnation, he was invited by Brigadier Shehu Musa Yar'Adua to appear before the investigating board in Lagos. In the meantime, his privileges were suspended. Even his pension, that was his right, not a privilege, was also illegally suspended. His brother, Air Force Major Moses Gowon was detained simply because he was his brother and later discharged from service. Another brother, Captain Isaiah Gowon, was jailed for 15 years after a second court-martial because of a harmless visit to the School of Artillery in Kaduna on February 13th. Fearful of the press-hyped atmosphere and presumption of guilt prior to the investigation and trial, Gowon suggested a neutral country as the venue of his submissions to the investigating board. He also offered swearing in an affidavit and responding point by point to any questionnaire of the government's choosing. The government, urged on by a mob-like mentality that pervaded the press, refused. Indeed, efforts were made to get the general to return to Nigeria by deception. He was even officially informed that his brother has been released from detention, when in fact he had not. Mistrustful of the intentions of the regime, Gowon wrote a lengthy and very detailed letter of explanation, offering to assist the government to find a solution to the endemic problems of coups and counter-coups in Nigeria. 1 week later, a government announcement monitored over the Voice of America asserted that General Gowon had been stripped of his rank, honors, and entitlements. However, no official letter was sent to that effect, in part because the government cannot forfeit the rank of an officer unless such an officer had been convicted of treason or other serious felony, which had not happened. Befuddled by the matter, it was not until 18 January 1979 that Volume 66, Official Gazette No. 3, formally declared him wanted as a fugitive offender, along with Captain Dauda Usman, Sergeant Clement Yildar, and funny enough, Emeka Ojukwu. With no further income from his pensions, Gowon once again had to rely on old friends. Mr. Oti absolutely refused to collect rent money from him. Gowon wrote a letter to some African leaders explaining his situation. None except one responded. This African leader, with whom Gowon had no prior personal relationship, gave him $50,000 to purchase a house. On another occasion, then President Ahidjo of Cameroon, who did not respond to Gowon's initial appeal, sent his children some pocket money during a visit to London. The school fees of his first son were paid for by an old Caucasian friend. Some members of his family in Nigeria sent money too from time to time. A wealthy international businessman from then Bendel State reportedly gave him a monthly stipend of £500 sterling for 18 months, while Nigerian ambassador to an unnamed European country offered him an old Volkswagen Passat. In the meantime, barely scrapping a living, the general continued his undergraduate program, and later, graduate studies at Warwick, including a PhD thesis on ECOWAS. In 1980, not long after President Shehu Shagari took over from General Obasanjo, Gowon made a detailed legal representation through his lawyers, Messrs. Godfrey Amatri and Solomon Asemota, now senior advocates of Nigeria. He supplemented with a letter of his own to Shagari, his former finance commissioner. Then there was no response. When there was no response after 1 year, he wrote to Shagari again in August 1981. These activities triggered a living debate within and outside the military. Some of Gowon's enemies from the coup of July 1975 were still in the army. But coup scares apart, the majority of the post-1979 officer corps was in favor of an amiable solution. The matter briefly became politically charged, particularly when linked to appeals for concurrent pardon for former secessionist leader Emeka Ojukwu. On October 1, 1981, after consultations with National Council of States, Shagari deftly rescinded the order published in Volume 66, Official Gazette No. 3, dated January 18, 1979. Since Gowon was never convicted, there was no basis for a pardon. Shagari released and pardoned former police commissioner Mr. Suka Dimka, Mr. Gyang Pam, also of the police, Mrs. Helen Gomwok, Major Abang, Captain Isaiah Gowon, Captain Wuyeb, Captain Maidodo, Warrant Officer Class 2 Isaiah, Sergeant Bob Wada, Lieutenant Welby, Mr. Anyadufo, and Mr. Inua. The public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Gowon, during a subsequent interview with the BBC, said he will return to Nigeria upon completion of his studies. He also added his voice to appeals through the government of Shehu Shagari to pardon his wartime opponent, Emeka Ojukwu, an event that later took place in 1982. It was also late 1982 that traditional rulers from Plateau State launched a fundraiser to build a house in Jos for the former Nigerian leader. It would be some years to come before his rank and privileges, wrongfully terminated without trial, would finally be fully officially acknowledged. This occurred under the leadership of then Major General, later General Ibrahim Babangida, one of the officers that conspired as a Lieutenant General to remove him in 1975, but then seized power for himself in 1985. Babangida also reversed some decisions of the Murtala Mohammed era Supreme Military Council, such as its dismissals of and property seizures from other figures of the Gowon era. One of the criticisms was that the tribunals that made some of those decisions in 1975 had done so in an atmosphere of witch hunting without due process of fairness. However, there are some in the polity who feels that the decision by Babangida to reverse the decisions of those of 1975 corruption tribunals is as controversial as the original tribunal decisions, particularly since it did not appear publicly to have been preceded by due process judicial review. General Yakubu Gowon is still alive and active as an elder statesman. He ventured briefly into elective politics and lost. He leads a religious group, Nigeria Praise, and has worked on eradicating guinea worm infestation. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I would really love to know your thoughts about the life of General Gowon after he was ousted in 1975 by the General Murtala Mohammed government. What do you think about the persecution of his family, the allegations that were brought up against him, and how he was treated by the Nigerian army? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification button to get more content like this about African history. It's with Nandi from Afriverse Historic. See you in the next one.